How do you tell if somebody is open-minded? Or how do you tell if you are open-minded? I would say it's your willingness to go into cognitive dissonance. Now, what does that mean? A willingness to go into cognitive dissonance means you're willing to confront a very uncomfortable truth that is going to just ruin your entire movie about yourself, your worldview, people in your life. Anything that's going to make you the villain in your own story, that's going to put you in cognitive dissonance, because we're always going to be the hero in our own story. That's even why we fancy ourselves open-minded, is we are the heroes of our story. And so we fancy ourselves as we are absolutely the people who are kind and smart, and we're not no fools. But the truth is that we all can be fooled. We can all, once you start to adapt this level of, I don't know anything, I'm curious, I'm uncertain, I'm willing to be the villain in my own story. I'm willing to confront all aspects that of my life could be wrong, and I'm going to be curious about that instead of entirely annihilated. Now, that's pretty hard, right? So we're not as open-minded as we fancy ourselves. And in turn, the people that we underestimate and assume are not open-minded, they are also really just like us, functioning from the same level of that I'm going to stay in my comfort zone and my worldview because that's what's comfortable and that's what's familiar, right? So cognitive dissonance, I think we ought to go into it a little more, is because I think it's such a key to open-mindedness in the following way. I think if somebody has already kind of had that willingness to go into cognitive dissonance in one aspect, then they're going to be willing to keep, there's going to be a consistency where they're going to keep having that willingness to be uncomfortable. For instance, if you have a cognitive dissonance kind of incident or trauma, like for instance, if you're somebody that's been married for 20 years, you find undeniable truth that your husband has been cheating on you that entire duration of 20 years. And there's no kind of way to justify it. There's no way to rationalize he's definitely been doing this the whole time. And you don't get it in the form of him texting the girl, because that would be actually too easy for you to justify. You'd be like, well, that's her fault. She's going after him. She's manipulative. No. Say you saw it in a complete undeniable way, like you saw his journal or you saw emails he wrote to her. Well, that would put you in cognitive dissonance because it would be absolutely the meteor coming into your movie to ruin your story. Like, oh, I guess the leading man in my movie is not a loyal person. I thought he was loyal for 20 years. Okay, you're going to go into your mind, and what happens when the mind is in cognitive dissonance is it is desperately trying to rewrite this new information, this undeniable truth, into what they already know as the existing truth. So it's trying to reconcile something very foreign and something that doesn't fit into the movie that you know. And that's why when people go into cognitive dissonance, they often go into this kind of scramble of mind where they're only going to bring up one variable. Like, for instance, they'll just be caught in a word salad where they're just kind of blah, blah, blah. You can tell they're in cognitive dissonance because they are not able to process in that kind of way of really considering all the factors. And that's what we always see. Of course, with emotional betrayals like cheating for 20 years, of course, it's like an obvious example. But cognitive dissonance isn't just about that. The woman that went through that problem, I think actually often is going to go through an awakening all around. Because once you've had that level of acceptance of cognitive dissonance in one view, like once you've had your reality smashed in that way, you're going to be more accepting that my reality can be smashed anytime. That can be bad because that can make you kind of in a PTSD kind of over vigilant state, and that's not good. But I mean it more so, if you've kind of confronted truth in one area, you're going to be more willing to confront truth and be open-minded to other possibilities. There's just going to be an amount of nuance to your thinking, because you've already had a moment where you've realized that what you believe can be completely wrong. And instead of, when you get that information, you don't immediately say, well, oh, I guess I was wrong for 20 years. Usually there's grappling and there's processing, and it will come in so many stages. But ultimately what you're going to get from that is things aren't always what they seem, and I don't know, and I'm not sure. And that is true to me. That is the whole key to an open mind, is I don't know, I'm not sure, I'm going to be curious. And so then the next thing, say that this woman then was confronted with a very, very unpleasant fact that coffee is not the elixir of life, but that coffee is actually poison, that your body, when it goes into your body, that perceived energized state you enter is actually your body in an adrenaline, fight or flight, get it out. We've got to get this poison out, so we're going to make sure that this human body pees quick. Okay, why? Okay, that runs contrary to our entire cultural view of coffee and your individual view of coffee, because I mean, coffee is usually just thrown in our faces. I mean, more, yeah, anyway. So when you're confronted with this thing that really goes contrary to your cultural worldview and your worldview, are you going to be able to confront that coffee is a poison? No, most people don't. Of course not. Why would you? Because there's enough things you can say, well, I can find 7 other articles that say coffee's healthy, so I'm going to do that. So, but say that and that's why I always emphasize, in order to go into cognitive dissonance, it has to be this kind of unequivocal, undeniable, smack you in the face type of truth, because otherwise your cognitive dissonance is going to, as I say, because that the process of it is rewriting your reality to stick with what you know already. So that's why like the open mind is never as open as we think, because our what we measure safety on is, how does this correlate to the story that's already in our head? Because we're no longer plastic. Children are like, they have that flexibility of mind and open mind because they don't have enough conditioning and programming and enough of even a movie. They're just they're like so soon in the movie that all kinds of things can influence it. Anyway, so coffee, I think a really good sign of whether someone's open-minded is if they are willing to just view a different point of view on coffee. I mean, it sounds like, well, it's that simple, because the truth is coffee is something that, I mean, it should be pretty low stakes. It's not an emotional, it shouldn't be too emotional like the cheating, and yet there's still a cognitive dissonance. I certainly feel it. I love coffee. I love the kind of that kind of manic energy, and I always perceived it as, this is what people tell me it is. It's this increased productivity, but I'm told that, but that could be a lie. And as you get more open to certain lies, you are able to view so many other things with that open mind of, well, I could be wrong about this. Culture could be wrong. There's no arbiter of truth that can really, it's harder and harder to discern what is true now. Yes. And there are things that are going to say coffee is good, and there are things that are going to say coffee is bad. And so how do you reconcile it? Well, you have to kind of pay attention to how your body feels and what the agenda behind certain truths are. Why is coffee pushed out us so much? Is it because it's just so great? Maybe, who knows? But stay curious. And I feel like when you have had that open-mindedness to be willing to go into cognitive dissonance, whether you're willing to confront the ugly truth that coffee may not be all that it's cracked up to be, that it could be actually a toxin, and if we are willing to confront, and that's the same with, we can confront this with alcohol, we can confront this with, ourselves. Where are we a villain? Where are we, what's our shadow side? Where are we a villain in our own story? So that's why many people are not open-minded. You have to be willing to go into cognitive dissonance, and that means you have to be willing to watch yourself as you're grappling and trying to rewrite something that's very uncomfortable and challenging to your reality. You're going to have to be willing to confront that. And not very many people are. And I'm not acting like I'm standing up on a Mount Olympus saying I certainly don't like to confront the coffee thing, but lately I've really been confronting it a lot. But I think it's more rewarding to be in the truth than to be in the lies. I mean, it is, of course, it's painful to go through cognitive dissonance and to have to rewire our stories, but there's actually, it's lightening your load too, because living in that constant lying and kind of self-protective, self-betrayal, just kind of, it's all just kind of a coat of and a veneer of bullshit that you don't, it feels good to let go of it and start to pursue truth, pursue curiosity, and just say and be free enough to say I don't know, and neither does anyone else. And let's confront truth and be open-minded. Let's open our minds. Anyway, I know it got a little word salady in here, but I hope this was helpful.